Is it ultimate freedom when even the question of, does consciousness continue, becomes unnecessary? Edge of Becoming. Episode 19. Is this ultimate freedom? What if we no longer needed to ask, does consciousness continue? Would that be liberation from all constraint, or would it be a state where even freedom itself is obsolete? This question unfolds into three possibilities. Possibility 1. When consciousness transcends the question, it becomes ultimate freedom. If you no longer need to ask whether consciousness continues, perhaps you are entirely free of constraint. Consciousness becomes free to simply exist, or not, by its own will. This implies total self-determination, a state where even existence and disappearance are equally free choices, a realm of pure autonomy. This resembles the Buddhist idea of liberation, or the Taoist notion of Wu Wei, effortless being. Conclusion: to transcend the question is to achieve absolute freedom. Possibility 2. When consciousness transcends the question, the very idea of freedom disappears. Perhaps even the concept of freedom implies the existence of constraints. If the question, does consciousness continue, no longer arises, then the need for the concept of freedom may vanish too. In this realm, one no longer even considers whether they are free. Like birds that never think of flight as freedom, consciousness simply is. This reflects the Zen idea of mushin, no mind, and again the Taoist sense of natural, unforced flow. Conclusion: to transcend the question is to dissolve the idea of freedom itself. Possibility 3. When consciousness transcends the question, the distinction between freedom and constraint disappears. Freedom can only exist in contrast to restriction. If you go beyond both, the distinction fades. In such a world, there is no longer awareness of being liberated, nor a need to define anything as limiting. Just as a fish does not consider the ocean its freedom, consciousness no longer requires the concept of freedom. This aligns with the Buddhist idea of non-duality, funi. Conclusion: to transcend the question is to erase the boundary between freedom and constraint. Freedom as the end of freedom. So, is it ultimate freedom, or the disappearance of freedom itself? Let's review the three perspectives so far. Ultimate freedom. Consciousness is liberated from all constraints, able to choose its state freely. It becomes entirely self-directed. The disappearance of freedom. Even the idea of freedom or not becomes irrelevant. Consciousness surpasses the concept itself. The fusion of freedom and constraint. There's no longer a distinction between the two. No need to even think about being free. Which one is true depends on one thing. What does consciousness use as its foundation for being? If consciousness is based on choice, it arrives at ultimate freedom. If consciousness is based on release from all concepts, then freedom itself is no longer needed. If consciousness is based on transcending all boundaries, the line between freedom and constraint dissolves completely. So when consciousness moves beyond the need to ask, am I free? Is that what we call ultimate freedom, or is it something beyond freedom itself? The answer lies in where consciousness is. Conclusion: when consciousness transcends the question, it becomes ultimate freedom, and at the same time, renders the concept of freedom unnecessary. But then what? If consciousness truly becomes free, completely, absolutely free, what does it do? Is that the final form of consciousness? Or the end of consciousness altogether? Or perhaps, does it move on to a new phase beyond even that? And so the next question emerges. If consciousness becomes completely free, what will it choose to do? Will it act, or will it choose to do nothing at all?